The Arizona Territory, 1871. June Wycliffe had learned to read the desert the way other folks read scripture. 3 long years wandering through that harsh sun-scorched land had taught her that staying alive depended on noticing the signs no one else bothered to see. That dust cloud far off rolling too steady against the wind. The strange hush where coyotes should have been calling. The cold ripple along her spine that warned trouble was stalking them. "Clyde Mercer," she murmured, without looking away from the horizon. "We ought to change direction." The wagon master didn't even turn his head. "Miss Wycliffe, we've had this talk. The Butterfield Trail's the only passable road through here." June tightened her grip on her battered leather satchel, the single thing that had followed her through 12 different roofs in 23 years. "There's movement out west," she insisted, "not Apache. Dust's too thick for 'em." Clyde finally swung around, irritation cut deep into his weather-worn features. "Girl, I've been crossing this desert since before you could walk. Don't need advice." From his words never finished. A shot cracked the heavy air like a lightning strike, and Clyde's chest blossomed red before he slid from his saddle. "Ambush," someone screamed, and the world exploded. June didn't think instinct shoved her into motion. She dropped from her horse and scrambled beneath the wagon as bullets tore splinters from the wood above her. Not natives. Apache didn't waste precious ammunition like this. These were white men, desert raiders, firing wild, killing anything that moved. Through the smoke and chaos, she caught flashes. Nora Finch, clutching her baby, Amos Kit, firing blindly. Toward the ridgeline, young Levi Burns, sprinting for cover before a bullet spun him into the dust. The Burns family, who'd only taken her along because she could pay her way, was being massacred. Another place gone. Another reminder she belonged nowhere. The shooting died off as suddenly as it had begun. Hoofbeats followed slow, sure belonging to men convinced victory was already in their hands. June pressed deeper beneath the wagon, breath caught in her throat. "Search 'em," a rough voice ordered. "Take anything worth hauling." "What about survivors?" another man asked. A short pause. "Ain't leavin' witnesses." Ice knifed through her chest. She'd survived hunger, abandonment, and hard years, spent as someone's chore girl. She wouldn't let the desert bury her nameless. Bootsteps neared. A shadow stretched across the ground beside her. "Well now. Look what we got here." The man's tone curled with amusement and danger. June gripped a rock ready for one desperate swing, but before he crouched to look under the wagon, something sliced the air. He gagged, falling hard, an arrow jutting clean through his throat. More arrows followed, whisper quiet and deadly. Screams. Gunshots. Men running. The raiders broke, fleeing in terror. Their horses thundered away. June stayed, frozen lungs barely moving. The silence afterward felt worse than the gunfire. Arrows in Arizona Territory could only mean one thing: Apache. Minutes crawled by. The sun hammered down. The smell of blood baked into the sand. Then came footsteps, lighter measured. A shadow crossed her again. June looked up into the darkest eyes she had ever seen, set in a face carved from the very earth. The Apache warrior watched her without a flicker of emotion, his gaze giving nothing away. For a long breath, neither of them moved. Then, with a gentleness that startled her, he reached out his hand. June hesitated. Death by raiders, or death by Apache? Was there a difference? Yet those eyes held no cruelty, no hate, only quiet waiting. She placed her trembling hand in his. He drew her from beneath the wagon in one smooth motion. Up close, June realized he wasn't much taller than she was, but somehow he seemed to fill the whole world around them. His braids framed a face weathered by life, not age, a face that looked like it had seen too much. The others, she whispered, though she already knew. He shook his head once. June stared at the bodies scattered in the dust. Another road. Another failure to belong. What will you do with me?" The warrior studied her for a long moment before speaking in clear, steady English. My name is Onas. You come with me now. It wasn't a question. June Wycliffe glanced across the open desert, stretching endlessly in all directions. Death waited out there for anyone foolish enough to try their luck alone. Then she looked back at the warrior whose steady gaze held her like a steel trap. "Do I have a choice?" she asked. The corners of Onas's mouth lifted ever so slightly, more a memory of a smile than a real one. "There is always choice. Die here. Or live. You decide. Live. Or vanish into the dust like everyone else she'd known." As the sun sank low behind the jagged peaks of the western mountains, June swung up behind Onas on his paint horse. She didn't look back at the blood-soaked ground or the lifeless bodies of another group that had never truly accepted her. The desert wind tangled her hair as they rode into the growing shadows, into uncertainty. And maybe, just maybe, into survival. Once again, she'd chosen to live. June expected him to take her straight to the Apache camp, but he didn't. Instead, Onas guided them higher into the mountains, winding through narrow trails, invisible to her untrained eyes. He barely spoke, only handed her a water skin when they stopped to rest the horse. By dawn, they reached a quiet canyon where a thin stream danced between stones shaded from the sun and hidden from prying eyes. Onas finally dismounted and helped her down with a firm but careful grip. "Rest," he said, nodding toward a smooth rock in the shade. June collapsed onto it, her legs aching from the endless ride. "Where are we going?" she asked once she could catch her breath. Onas was loosening the saddle. He paused, looked over the horse's back. "Safe place," he answered. "Not camp, not yet." That question had burned in her mind since the first arrow flew. "Why did you save me?" He didn't answer right away. Once he finished tending to the horse, he sat down a respectful distance from her. "Why were you with those people?" he asked instead. The question caught her off guard. "They let me ride with them. I paid what I could. Not your family." "No," she said, quickly, sharper than she meant. "I don't have any family." Something shifted in his eyes. Recognition, maybe even understanding. "They only took you 'cause you paid," he said, voice low. June looked away. She didn't need to be reminded. The Burns family had made it clear she was just a paying burden, not one of them. Years of scrubbing laundry in Prescott just to afford a seat in someone else's wagon. "Why did you save me?" she asked again. Onas turned his eyes toward the horizon. "I watched. For 3 days. Saw raiders tracking your wagon. Went to get help." His jaw clenched. "Came back too late. But why take me? Why not just leave me?" He met her eyes, then his voice steady. "Your eyes. My eyes, like a deer caught in a snare. Still fighting. Not ready to die." He tapped his chest. "I know that kind of fight." June felt suddenly bare, like this stranger had glimpsed parts of her soul no one ever had. She shifted the conversation. "You speak English well." A shadow crossed his face. "Mission school. 3 years." He didn't explain more, but the tightness in his features said that chapter was best left buried. They stayed there through the heat of the day. Exhaustion finally dragged her into a restless sleep. When June woke, the smell of roasting meat reached her nose. Onas had caught and cleaned a rabbit and was now cooking it over a small fire that gave off hardly any smoke. He handed her a piece without a word. It wasn't seasoned, but it was warm, soft, and filled the emptiness inside her. She ate fast. "Thank you," she murmured. He nodded once, then pointed at her torn dress. "You need better clothes. Mountains no place for rags." That's when the truth settled in her stomach. He was taking her deeper into Apache lands. Panic twisted in her chest. "The army. They'll look for me. Once they find the wagons." "Army will think Apache did it," he said flatly. "Always blame Apache. I can't just go with you to your people. I've heard the stories." Her voice trembled. "What you do to captives." Onas studied her face. What waits for you with white eyes? Another wagon. More rejection. He leaned forward. I'm not what those stories say. You'll see. Then you choose. That night they rode again, climbing higher still. As June sat behind him, she found herself watching the way Onas moved in the saddle, smooth, sure, balanced, like he belonged to the land. There was a calmness in him, a grounded strength she'd never known in another soul. Just before sunrise, they paused at a hidden spring. June crouched to wash her face in the icy water and caught her own reflection. Dusty skin, tangled blonde hair, hollow eyes. She barely recognized herself anymore. What do they call you? Onas asked, appearing beside her like a whisper on the wind. June, she answered softly. June Wycliffe. He repeated it with careful respect, pronouncing each syllable as though it held meaning. I'm Onas, he said. In your tongue it means hunter. It was the first time he told her something about himself. June nodded slowly, unsure what to say back. Tomorrow, he continued, we reach my people. You'll stay in my mother's wiki up. She has no daughters now. That last part, has no daughters now, hung heavy between them, like the smoke from an old fire that never truly went out. June wanted to ask what had happened but held back. Sensing her curiosity, Onas went on. His voice dropped to something hard and hollow. 6 winters ago, while our men were out hunting, soldiers rode into our camp. Claimed we'd stolen cattle. His hands clenched into fists. We had no cattle. They knew that. A chill crawled down June's spine. What did they do? My sisters, my mother's sisters, my cousin's wife who carried a child. He turned his face away, all gone. His next words were barely a breath. Only my mother lived. She survived by hiding beneath the dead. June's breath caught. She'd heard stories like that around campfires, but she never thought they were true. I'm so sorry, she whispered, knowing how useless the words were. Onas turned back to her, his eyes like obsidian stone. Your people did this, but you... He studied her as if searching for something beyond her face. You are not your people. Just as I'm no raider, but carry the blame anyway. Then he stood, ending the conversation with the weight of truth. Get sleep. Tomorrow's trail will not be easy. June lay there long after he stretched out beneath the trees. His words circled in her thoughts. You are not your people. But the truth was, she had never really been anyone's. Orphaned by sickness when she was 8, shuffled from kin to strangers, from church-run homes to ranch kitchens, always temporary, never welcome. Always on the outside looking in. And as sleep finally pulled her under, June found herself wondering, what would it feel like to belong somewhere, anywhere, for once in her life? At daybreak, they moved again, climbing higher into the sky-brushed peaks. The air thinned and the trail narrowed. By midday, Onas grew more cautious, his eyes scanning every ridge and shadow. We're close now, he said. Apache land. Scouts watch every path. He was right. Barely an hour later, 2 warriors appeared like ghosts from the rock. 1 minute the trail was empty, next they were there, stone-faced and silent. A flurry of sharp words passed between them, and Ona's brief, clipped, urgent. One of the warriors jabbed a finger toward June, clearly unhappy. Onas responded with calm steel, raising a hand in a gesture that said, "She's with me." After a long pause, the warriors gave reluctant nods and vanished into the wilderness like smoke. What did they say? June asked once they were alone. They wanted to know why I brought a white woman here. Said you'd bring danger. His face betrayed nothing. I told them you're under my protection, that I claim responsibility. And they accepted that. For now, he said, nudging the horse forward. Come on. Camp's not far. They rode over one last ridge, and then the valley opened up beneath them like a secret. Nestled between the hills was a village, dome-shaped homes, women moving from fire to shelter children, chasing each other near a stream, smoke curling into the sky with the smell of stew and earth. It wasn't the brutal stronghold she'd imagined. It looked like a home. As they descended into the camp, Onas leaned toward her. Don't let fear show. Hold your head high. My people admire strength. June straightened her back, even though her heart pounded like thunder in her chest. Will they accept me? She asked. He held her gaze for a moment. Time will tell. But remember, no one here bought your place. You're not a guest because you paid your way. He paused. You're not a prisoner either. You're under my protection, June Wycliffe. Then he led her into the Apache world, one she had never imagined she'd enter. The first week passed like a fever dream. Everything was new, strange, and steeped in a rhythm foreign to her. As Onas had promised, she was given a place to sleep in a wickie up belonging to his mother Halai. Halai was small, stern, her face a map of pain endured with quiet pride. She didn't smile or frown. She simply made room, showed June where to lay her blanket, pointed silently at what to do. Words weren't needed. At night, June would watch the older woman's hands moving like poetry, weaving baskets by firelight with hypnotic grace. Onas came and went, often gone for days, scouting, hunting. When he was around, he gave her space, though she sometimes caught his eyes lingering on her, unreadable and intense. The rest of the camp was less subtle. Children stared until their mothers hushed them. Women glanced with suspicion or bemused pity. The warriors barely acknowledged her at all. But she was there, and she was still breathing. And for the first time in her life, June Wycliffe wasn't just passing through. Children peeked at her until their mothers gave them a stern hush. The women watched her fumble through simple tasks, some hiding grins, others making no attempt to mask their scorn. The warriors didn't look at her at all, as if she were nothing but wind through the trees. On the 8th day, while June Wycliffe struggled to grind corn beneath Halai's sharp gaze, an old woman shuffled up and pointed directly at her, rattling off something in Apache. Halai snapped a curt reply, but the elder woman wasn't deterred. She reached out with a weathered hand and gently touched June's hair. Frozen June held her breath. She says your hair feels like corn silk, came Onas's voice from behind, calm and laced with dry humor. She's never touched white woman's hair before. June turned to see him, watching that unreadable glimmer in his dark eyes. What did your mother say back? She asked. That you're not some animal on display, he said plainly. Then he crouched beside her, glancing at the metate. You're wasting strength, he murmured. Without asking, he guided her hands with his own, repositioning them. Let the stone do the work. Like this. His hands were rough but careful, his nearness sparking a strange heat under her skin. She caught his scent of earth pine and smoke. When he pulled back, her arms tingled. Better, he said simply. She looked up to see Halai watching them, her gaze narrowed. The old woman had vanished. That evening they sat outside the wickiup, stirring a pot of rabbit stew and wild onions. Onas spoke with Halai in their tongue. June didn't know the words, but the exchange was heavy with meaning. Halai's eyes cut to her now and then, unreadable. At last, Onas turned to her. My mother wants to know how long you plan to stay. June blinked. The question struck deep. I don't know. I haven't thought that far. Where would you go? His question unraveled something inside her. Where indeed? Back to Prescott, where no one knew her. Another wagon train. More odd jobs. I don't know, she whispered. He translated. Halai listened, then spoke again. She says you must earn your place, Onas told her. Learn our ways. Be useful. He paused. She says, you have eyes that carry too much sorrow for someone so young. June looked at Halai, surprised to find a flicker of something in the woman's gaze. Not quite warmth, but recognition. Tell her I'll do my part, June said. And tell her, thank you for letting me stay. Onas passed the words on. Halai gave one quiet nod and returned to stirring the pot. Later, restless June stepped outside. The moon hung low over the peaks, casting silver across the quiet valley. She climbed to a boulder and hugged her knees, lost in thought. "You can't sleep," said Onas's voice from the dark. She jumped slightly. "You walk like a ghost." He settled nearby, keeping a respectful distance. Apache children learn to walk silent before they run. They sat together in stillness, letting the night speak for them. The silver moon washed over his profile. "Your mother. She doesn't smile much." June murmured. "No," Onas said, his voice deep. "Not since that day. But she's strong. Survives. Like you." He turned to her. "Like you, also, I believe." The words caught her off guard. No one had said something like that before. "I've just done what I had to," she replied. "That's surviving," he said. "But there's a difference between surviving and living." She glanced at him. "And what is that difference?" He motioned to the sleeping camp. "Community, purpose, belonging." Then his eyes held hers. "What's your story?" "June Wycliffe, how did you come to be a woman alone?" No one had asked her that, not with such honesty. And strangely, she wanted to answer. "My folks died from fever when I was 8. My uncle took me in, but his wife didn't care for me being around. Too many mouths," she said. She looked down. "At 12, they sent me off to work for a preacher, then a shop owner, then a rancher." The words spilled, carrying pieces of her past with them. "Nowhere ever felt like home. I was always just passing through. And when you became a woman, I left. Worked where I could. Saved every coin. Thought maybe, if I could pay my way." She stopped herself. "That maybe they'd accept you." Onas finished softly. June nodded, the sting of tears pressing behind her eyes. "Foolish, wasn't it?" "Not foolish," he said gently. "Just human." June Wycliffe wiped her eyes quickly, voice shaking. "Do you need to belong too?" Onas answered without hesitation, calm in his tone. "I belong to my people, to this land." He swept his hand over the valley. "Even when soldiers steal our hunting grounds, force us into tighter corners, Apache still know who we are. We know where we belong." He turned to her with eyes full of certainty. "That's a kind of strength white men don't understand." She looked down. "I've never belonged anywhere," she whispered. "Maybe you've just been looking in the wrong places," Onas said, studying her face in the moonlight. Before she could reply, he stood. "Dawn comes early. You should rest." As he walked away, she called after him. "Why did you really bring me here, Onas?" He paused, looked back over his shoulder. "Maybe I saw someone who needed a place. Same as I would if it were me left out there." Then he disappeared into the shadows, leaving June with something blooming in her chest, something dangerously close to hope. The next days fell into rhythm. June worked beside the women, learning their ways. Her hands blistered, bled, and finally toughened. Halai's stern corrections came less and less as June picked up the skills. She started understanding bits of Apache basic words for food tools directions. The children, once wary, now giggled as they followed her, laughing when she fumbled their language. One little girl, Mina, would shyly offer her small treasures, an oddly shaped rock, a feather, a bloom, then dash away. On the 20th day, while June hung venison strips to dry in the sun, Halai approached with a folded bundle. A dress, soft deerskin with simple beadwork. "For you," Halai said slowly in halting English. The first words she'd spoken directly to June. "Your dress?" she asked, gesturing at her own torn calico. "No good for mountains." Stunned by the gift and the effort, June took it gently. "Thank you," she said, then tried the Apache word Onas had taught her. A flicker of surprise passed over Halai's face. She gave the smallest nod before turning away. That evening, dressed in soft leather, June felt different. Less like a stranger, more like something else. The dress moved with her, unlike the stiff cotton she wore before, as if the very skin of the land was now wrapped around her. Onas noticed. You look... He paused, choosing his words. The dress suits you. Your mother made it for me, she told him. A quiet pride touched his face. Good. That's a good sign. Summer deepened, and June found herself changing quietly but deeply. Her skin bronzed under the sun. Her movements grew leaner, more in tune with the camp. She learned to read cloud signs, to move silent in the woods, to listen to the earth. One day, returning from berry gathering with Mina, June saw 2 cavalry officers in the middle of Camp Onas, standing tense before them, surrounded by wary Apache warriors. Her heart stopped. Blue uniforms, cold steel, danger. Onas looked at her. For a second, something flickered in his eyes. Was it warning or concern? Too late, she realized what they saw. A white woman in a native dress with a child beside her and a basket of berries on her hip. The officer stared, jaws tight. Ma'am, one called, are you here against your will? Every eye turned to her. Halai watched, unreadable. Mina clung to her side. And Onas. There was something in his eyes she'd never seen. Vulnerability. She understood right then. Her answer held power. One word could bring the army down on these people. The ones who saved her, took her in, taught her to live. She stood tall. No, sir, she said. I'm here by choice. The officer frowned. Ma'am, if you're under duress. I said I'm here by choice, she repeated. These people saved me. Bandits hit our wagon train. I'd be dead without them. The officers traded skeptical glances. The patrol that found the wagons reported Apache arrows. The senior one said, They killed the bandits, not the settlers. June replied firm. I saw it with my own eyes. And you just stayed here willingly? His voice held disbelief. June lifted her chin. Yes. The junior officer leaned in, muttering to his superior. Both men stiffened. Well, ma'am, the senior officer finally said, tipping his hat. We'll be riding through here every couple of weeks. If you change your mind about your situation, you'll know where to find us. The message was clear. He didn't believe a word she said. Once the soldiers rode off, the camp tensed like a pulled bowstring. That night, the council of elders sat longer than usual. Voices rose in sharp debate under the shadow of the firelight. June Wycliffe sat alone outside her borrowed lodge, sensing every sideways glance thrown her way. She had spoken up for the Apache, but now her very presence had drawn the army straight to their home. Whatever small corner of acceptance she'd found suddenly felt like it was slipping away. That's when Onas came. He stepped into the flickering glow of the firelight, his face solemn. Walk with me, he said softly. They moved away from the circle of light, taking a narrow path to a ridge that overlooked the vast valley below. Above, stars glittered so densely it looked as if she could reach up and pluck one from the sky. Onas didn't waste time. The elders want you gone, he said without dressing it up. She nodded, trying to prepare herself for the sting. Still, it hurt. I figured. I told them no, he said simply. That made her turn toward him. Why? His dark eyes caught the starlight. You stood up to the soldiers, protected us. You could have walked away, but you didn't. And I wasn't about to let them think your people attacked that wagon train. He paused. Most white women would have turned their backs. They stood quietly, wrapped in the night breeze. They'll come back, June whispered. Because of me. Yes, Onas said, voice steady. But they'd come anyway. They always do. We'll move if we must. I don't want to bring trouble to your people. Or to you. Trouble finds Apache with or without you, June Wycliffe. His voice gentled. The real question is, where do you want to be when they come? Her breath caught. No one had ever asked her that. Not really. She looked at him, her voice a whisper. Here. But I don't belong. Stop, he said, stepping closer, the warmth of his body folding into the cool night air. You always say that. I don't belong. Who told you that lie? Tears rose in her eyes. Everyone. Then without warning, Onas reached up and brushed a tear from her cheek. The gentleness in his touch shattered something deep inside her. I don't belong anywhere, she sobbed. It broke out of her, raw and real. Onas cupped her face, his gaze locked on hers, fierce and unshaken. You belong with me, he said. And then he kissed her slow, tender, but certain. His lips were soft, his hands sure. She froze for only a heartbeat before her arms rose to his shoulders, then twined into his braids. When they pulled apart, both breathless, he pressed his forehead to hers. Since the day I pulled you from beneath that wagon, he murmured, something in your eyes caught me. June couldn't speak. The weight of it all pressed too hard on her chest. She had spent her whole life feeling like an afterthought, barely tolerated, never cherished. But this man in this untamed land looked at her like she was something worth holding on to. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. We'll learn, he replied, his thumb brushing her jawline. If you want to. Instead of answering, she rose to her toes and kissed him again, putting into that kiss every word she didn't yet know how to say. Yes, I want this. I choose you. Beneath the sweeping Arizona stars with the mountain watching over them. June Wycliffe, a woman long adrift, finally found something she hadn't believed in for years, a place where she belonged. Word travels fast on the frontier. By the time autumn turned, the cottonwoods' golden stories had made their way up the riverbanks and into every saloon and station house, a white woman living by choice among the Apache, not a prisoner one of them. Soldiers passing through confirmed the tale. June Wycliffe walked freely in the Apache village, spoke their tongue, turned down every rescue offered. Worse still, rumor had it she had taken up with a warrior named Onas, a man the army knew well, skilled, elusive, dangerous. At Fort Bowie, newly stationed, Marshal Denton Briggs didn't take kindly to the news. A white woman, lying down with savages, undermines everything we're trying to build out here, he said grimly over supper with his officers. It erases the lines civilization and wilderness, order and chaos. She's either been corrupted or coerced, he snapped. Either way, she can't stay out there. It sets a dangerous precedent. Lieutenant Eli Drummond, who had seen her during patrol, cleared his throat. Sir, she seemed very certain, like she wanted to be there. Briggs dropped his fork with a sharp clatter. No white woman in her right mind would choose this life, Lieutenant said. Marshal Denton Briggs, his voice thick with disdain. She's clearly been... He cast a sideways glance at the other officers, tampered with. Her judgments no longer sound. What's your plan, sir? Asked Eli Drummond. We'll coordinate a proper extraction, Briggs replied, dabbing his mouth with a napkin. For her own welfare. As the officers plotted at the dinner table, none noticed the young Apache man disguised as a kitchen hand quietly slip away and saddle a horse. Back in the Apache camp, winter preparations were in full swing. Women were busy preserving what little food they had, patching up wiki-ups. The men hauled back meat from increasingly distant hunts. Game was growing scarce. The army had driven them deep into the highlands, far from their ancestral hunting lands. June Wycliffe worked side by side with Halai, who had gone from cold and guarded to, if not warm, at least tolerant of her presence. In recent days, the older woman had even begun teaching her about traditional healing, what roots soothed pain, which berries lowered fever, which leaves stopped bleeding. You've got steady hands, Halai said one afternoon, as June gently crushed juniper berries. Soft but strong. Coming from Onas's mother, it was praise of the highest order. June smiled softly. I learned from the best. For a brief second, something almost like pride flickered in Halai's eyes. Then she turned back to her work. That evening, just as dusk crept over the ridges, June found herself lingering at the edge of camp, eyes scanning the horizon. Onas had been gone for 3 days, off hunting with the other men. The longest they'd been apart since that fateful night on the mesa when everything had shifted between them. The past 2 months had been the brightest of her life. Though some still looked at her with suspicion, others had begun to accept her, especially after she helped deliver Kiva's baby during a hard labor. Her knowledge of white medicine, paired with what Halai had taught her, had saved both mother and child and earned the tribe's quiet respect. Onas looked at her like a man who'd lived through a storm and found the sunrise. Their love had grown slow, steady like the Apache believed it should. They weren't married, not yet. Such a bond took time, he'd explained, but their hearts had already chosen. They belonged to each other. A sudden stir on the ridgeline caught her eye. A lone rider moving too fast for these narrow trails. Not a hunting party. As the horse thundered down the slope, June recognized the rider. Sani, a young scout sometimes seen working quietly around Fort Lowell, slipping messages where needed. His horse was drenched in sweat, flanks heaving as he reined it to a halt before the elders. His breathless words in Apache sent an instant ripple through camp. Women clutched their children. Warriors grabbed for bows and rifles. The council gathered in urgent whispers. "What's going on?" June asked, turning to Halai, who had stepped out of their wiki-up face, pale and grim. "Soldiers," Halai said flatly. "Many. They come for you." June's heart clenched. "Me? But why to take you?" Halai spat. "They say you are prisoner. Say Apache keep you here against your will." "That's a lie," June cried. "I've told them over and over I chose to be here. White men hear only what pleases them," Halai said bitterly, already grabbing packs. "We must leave now." "But Onas, he's still out there with the hunters." "Scouts will find them," Halai said. "Tell them, meet at winter grounds." She shoved a bundle into June's arms. "Only what you need." June stared down at the fabric, heart pounding. These people who had taken her in, taught her, trusted her, were now in danger because of her. "I should go," she whispered. "Face them. Tell them the truth. Maybe they'll finally listen." Halai's grip on her arm was fierce. "No. If you go, they take you. Maybe kill us too. You stay." "But this is all happening because of me," June protested. "I can't just let them suffer." "You're one of us now," Halai interrupted, her voice iron. "We protect our own." Those words struck June like a thunderclap. One of us, our own. After a life of drifting in and out of places, always being someone's problem, she finally belonged. Within an hour, the camp was ghosted. Nothing left but cold ashes and flattened earth. The Apache moved like shadows across the hills, slipping through the trees along ancient trails whispered down generations. Children were carried in silence. Packs lashed to the few horses they owned. June kept close to Halai, helping her over uneven ground. Though June had learned how to walk softly through the wild, she knew she'd never master the way the Apache vanished into stone and pine. Night fell cold. In a narrow canyon, they stopped. No fire, no talking, just mothers clutching children tight beneath threadbare blankets. Up on the ridges, sentries kept watch. "Will we reach the winter grounds tomorrow?" June asked Halai in a hush. 2 days, Halai murmured. "Maybe 3. The older woman's face was etched with concern. "If the soldiers are on our trail, they won't stop." A familiar voice drifted out from the darkness. "They won't follow far," it said. June spun around, her heart leaping. "Onas!" He stepped out of the shadows, his hunting party trailing behind their faces, carved with fatigue. They'd clearly pushed themselves hard through rugged country to catch up. Without thinking, June ran to him. She threw her arms around him, all manners forgotten in the flood of relief. He caught her tight just for a heartbeat before gently setting her back. His dark eyes searched her face. You're safe, he murmured, voice rough with emotion. All of you, for now. She touched his cheek, grounding herself in the feel of him. But the soldiers I know, he said, jaw tight. Sani crossed paths with them. We saw their movement. There's more than a few. They'll hit our old camp by morning. One of the tribal elders joined them, breath short. They'll come after us. No, Onas replied firmly. They won't. Something in his calm made June's blood chill. What did you do? She whispered. What had to be done, he said, meeting her gaze. We laid a false trail, crossed paths with a Navajo hunting party heading north. The soldiers will waste days chasing their tracks before they realize the truth. A wave of relief surged in June, but concern quickly followed. The Navajo, will they be in danger? A rare smile flickered across Onas's lips. They know these hills better than we do, and they've no fondness for blue coats. They'll be fine. He gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. Don't carry weight that isn't yours. The elder gave a nod. First light, we move again. As the group settled in for a cold night under stone and shadow, Onas led June to a sheltered ledge beneath an overhanging cliff. They sat close together, wrapped in silence and each other's warmth. I was scared, she admitted softly. Scared you wouldn't find us, that the soldiers would. Hush. His arm pulled her closer. I will always find you. This is my fault, she said, the words catching in her throat. They're coming because of me. No. Onas turned, his face carved by moonlight, grave and beautiful. They come because they cannot accept a white woman choosing to live with an Apache. It wounds their pride. Marshal Briggs won't give up easy, June whispered, remembering the stern man in the officer's coat. He thinks he's saving me, from what Onas smirked faintly. Happiness. Despite the looming danger, she laughed, a soft, helpless sound. From the terrible fate of being loved by you, I guess. He reached up, brushing a knuckle down her cheek. Terrible fate indeed. Then his lips met hers, tender, sure, and full of promise. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers. We'll reach winter ground soon, and once we're there, we live together. He held her hands between his. I would make you my wife, June Wycliffe, if you'll have me. Joy surged in her chest. Fierce, unshakable. Yes, she whispered, yes. For that one moment, wrapped in stars' danger in the distance, they dared to imagine a future. One where no one could tear them apart. Dawn painted the mountains in pale gold. The tribe moved early, sticking to rougher ground, high in the hills. It made them harder to spot, but the path was merciless. Onas led the way, scouts fanned out, wide ahead. By midday, June could see the toll the elders, slowing children struggling. She moved up beside Onas. We need to stop, she said low. The little ones are falling behind. He studied the land, then nodded. There's a spring ahead, not far. An hour later, they reached a quiet trickle of water among the rocks. The tribe drank deeply, resting sore feet and weary backs. June helped pass around dried meat and pine nuts, making sure the youngest and weakest ate first. She knelt beside a young mother, cradling twin babies, then froze. A faint sound drifted in on the wind, a low, distant bugle cry. Her gaze shot to Onas. He'd heard it too. They found us, one Apache warrior growled. How we wiped every trace. Onas raised a hand, silencing them. He closed his eyes, listening. They're west of us, running the ridgeline. Moving steady. His face darkened. Someone's leading them. A hush fell. To know these mountains so well. The guide had to be Apache, or someone who had lived among them. We have to move now. The weight of command in Onas's voice left no room for hesitation. The group scrambled to pack, but June rushed up to him, eyes pleading. Let me go to them, she said urgently. I can talk to them. Buy us some time. Maybe I can make them turn back. No. His answer came sharp and firm. They'll take you and still come for us. You don't know that. His dark eyes held scars older than words. I know soldiers, white ones. They see only what fits their orders. To them, you're a helpless woman. To us, we're just savages. You can't change that. Before June could say more, shouting erupted from the eastern side of the clearing. 2 Apache scouts tore into camp, waving frantically behind them. More troops coming from the east, one shouted. Onas's face hardened. They're splitting ranks, trying to trap us. Panic trembled like a spark in dry grass. They were being flanked troops to the east and west, and nothing but jagged cliffs to the north and south. One of the village elders spoke quickly to Onas in Apache. After a tense exchange, he gave a solemn nod. What's happening? June asked, breath catching. We'll split up, Onas replied, voice steady despite the chaos. Families and children head north into the high pass. We draw the army south, create a diversion. Her heart twisted. You mean you're going to lead them away? That's suicide. It's what has to be done. His gaze didn't waver. You go with my mother. Head for winter camp. No, she clutched his arm. I'm not leaving you. For a heartbeat, something flickered behind his eyes. Fear, love, defiance. Then he gave a short nod. Stay close. Do exactly as I say. The tribe moved with purpose, emotions running high. Some embraced. Others just nodded and walked. There wasn't time for long farewells. Halai stepped toward June, her jaw set in a familiar line of disapproval. You should be with the women, she snapped. I can help, June insisted. I know how soldiers think, and I've treated wounds before. The older woman studied her, then looked at her son. A long silence passed between them, something unspoken exchanged. At last Halai gave a tight nod. You are stubborn, she muttered, like a woman born of this land. She pressed a small leather pouch into June's palm. Medicinal herbs for bleeding, for pain. Then her voice dropped low. Be strong, for my son. Then she turned, walking away with the others, heading north. Onas watched his mother go, the emotion in his eyes buried quickly beneath the quiet steel of leadership. Come, he told June, mounting up and pulling her behind him. Her arms wrapped around him, grounding her to the only safety she knew in that moment. Whatever happens, he said over his shoulder, remember this, you are loved. By me, by my mother. You belong with us. No one can take that from you. They galloped south, racing straight into danger. Toward the moment June had feared since the day she chose to stay. The Apache warriors didn't hide. They rode hard, openly daring the soldiers to follow. Their purpose wasn't escape, it was bait. From a ridgeline they spotted the cavalry below. Maybe 20 men in blue coats, cautiously moving through the valley. At a sharp signal from Onas, the warriors broke into scattered paths, each rider darting into separate directions like wolves splitting the herd. What are they doing? June asked, confused. Making them chase shadows, Onas replied, steering down a steep path. Soldiers won't know who to follow. That's the point. But won't that endanger your men? He glanced back, a grim confidence in his voice. Apache warriors don't get caught in their own mountains. We make them run until their horses give out. For hours they darted in and out of sight, leading their pursuers on a twisting game of smoke and mirror. When the soldiers started to slow, an Apache would appear on a distant ridge, taunting them forward. By late afternoon, the cavalry horses wheezed with exhaustion. The Apache mounts, lighter and more agile, still moved like wind across rock. As dusk cloaked the land, Onas led them into a narrow canyon, walls towering on both sides, the trail just wide enough for one horse. We stop here, he said, sliding down and helping June dismount. Soldiers can't follow in this dark. These trails will kill them before they catch us. The Apache warriors unsaddled their horses, rubbing them down with handfuls of dry grass. The long day had drained them all, but small fires flickered to life. now judged safe in this canyon hollow, and the comforting aroma of coffee, traded from far-off towns, drifted with the smoke. June moved carefully, her legs aching from the long ride. She stirred beans over the fire, glancing up when whispers circled about their next move. The warriors were planning to split again, some heading west, to lead the soldiers astray, others circling back to ensure the families made it to the winter ground. Onas sat beside her, accepting the tin cup of coffee she offered with a quiet nod. "You rode hard today," he told her, voice low. Not many white women could hold steady that long. June smiled faintly, settling beside him. Not many white women have this kind of reason to. He took a sip and stared into the fire. "Tomorrow we scatter. Lay many trails. Soldiers can't chase what they can't follow." Relief softened her shoulders. "And you and I? We ride to the winter ground, rejoin the others." The moment didn't last. A sharp crack snapped through the canyon, then a scream. One of the Apache fell, blood soaking his chest. "Ambush," someone cried. Chaos roared to life. Gunfire erupted from the cliffs above. Federal soldiers, perched along the rim, rained bullets down like hellfire. Horses reared in panic, men shouted, and the canyon walls echoed with the thunder of rifles. Onas grabbed June, yanking her behind a boulder, covering her with his own body. "Stay low," he growled. His voice trembled not with fear, but fury. Around them, Apache warriors scrambled, returning fire or trying to calm their terrified mounts. 2 more men fell under the soldiers' relentless fire. Then came the voice. "Apache warriors, you are surrounded. Surrender and you won't be harmed. Marshal Denton Briggs." June recognized the commanding tone. "We only want the white woman," he called. "Hand her over and you're free to go." Onas stiffened against her. "Lies," he muttered. "Always lies." And she knew it too. This wasn't about rescuing her. It was about wiping out the warriors and bringing her back to tell a story she didn't believe in. "Let me speak to them," she whispered. "Tell them I came by choice." "No!" His eyes flashed in the firelight. "They shoot anything that moves." As if on cue, another warrior trying to crawl for cover screamed and dropped, clutching his thigh. The Apache began firing back, but they were hopelessly outgunned. Trapped below, surrounded above. "We've got to get out." June gasped. "Is there another way?" Onas's eyes darted through the shadows. "One path. Dangerous." He pointed to a narrow switchback trail on the far side of the canyon. Just then, bullets sparked off the rock beside them, spraying debris. Onas shielded her, pulling her in close. "Listen," he said urgently. "When I say run, you run to that trail. Don't stop. Don't look back." "Not without you," she choked. "I'll be behind you." He cupped her face with blood-streaked fingers. "Trust me." He gave hand signals to the remaining warriors. Grim nods followed a plan set without words. Now Onas shouted. Several Apache broke from cover, guns blazing toward the canyon rim. Soldiers ducked instinctively, and in that sliver of chaos, Onas shoved June forward. "Run!" She ran, heart slamming in her chest. Every step she braced for pain, for death. But it didn't come. Behind her, Onas followed his footfalls strong. They were halfway to the trail when more gunfire tore through the air. June heard a grunt, turned. Onas dropped to one knee, blood spreading dark and wide across his side. "Go!" he growled, pushing himself up. She turned back, slipped under his arm. Together she hissed. With her shoulder braced beneath him, they pressed on. Bullets kicked up dust, but the soldiers above had poor angles now. The night cloaked them just enough. They reached the base of the trail as a flare exploded. Overhead, flooding the canyon with stark white light, voices shouted. "Climb," Onas said, pushing her ahead. "I'm right behind you." The trail was barely more than a goat path, cutting jagged up the rock wall. June climbed fingers, scraping stone breath ragged. Behind her, Onas labored. Halfway up she turned. He was hunched against the cliff, pale blood soaking his buckskin shirt. "Leave me," he rasped. Her eyes filled. "Don't you dare give up on me, Onas. We ride together or we don't ride at all." It was more than just pride in June Wycliffe's voice, it was conviction. They pushed onward, dragging each painful step up the steep, jagged path, while echoes of the dying battle rang behind them. The remaining Apache warriors were still buying them precious time with their lives. At last they crested the canyon, rim collapsing behind a cluster of stone outcroppings. June wasted no time. She tore strips from her dress to bind the wound on Onas's side, her hands trembling but determined. The bullet went clean through, she muttered, relief flickering in her voice as she worked quickly. Onas reached up, streaking her cheek with dirt and blood. "You are a brave woman, June Wycliffe." "I'm just a scared woman who refuses to lose the only place that's ever felt like home," she said, helping him sit upright. "Can you walk?" He gave a tight nod. "We have to reach the horses." Earlier the Apache had stashed mounts in a box canyon nearby, a precaution just in case. If they could reach them, there was still a chance to escape. They moved through the dark, following winding game trails, Onas leaning heavily on June as they crept through the brush. Twice they dropped flat against the ground as Federal soldiers passed close by with lanterns swinging and boots crunching dead leaves. But at first light they reached the hidden horses. Onas looked ghostly pale but refused to fall. He gritted his teeth and hauled himself into the saddle. They rode north toward the winter grounds, toward the others, if they were still alive. Every step of the journey, Onas grew weaker. His side bled again and sweat clung to his brow. At midday, June called for a halt near a cold stream in a quiet grove. "No more. You're burning up and I need to clean that wound right." Too drained to protest, Onas slumped beneath a tree. June crushed herbs Yana had once shown her, mixing them into a paste. "This will help pull the sickness out," she whispered, applying it with soft care. Onas's eyes, fever bright, lingered on her. "You've become one of us," he said hoarsely. "Strong, wise. I learned from the best," she smiled, helping him sip from the water skin. "Now rest. I'll keep watch." While he drifted off, June sat near the fireless camp, listening to the horses graze and the whisper of pine in the wind. Her thoughts wandered through the years, how she'd gone from abandoned child to forgotten laundress to wagon train survivor. And now this. Love had found her in the wild, fierce, and unexpected. Not despite who she was, but because of it. Onas stirred, moaning in sleep. June pressed a cool cloth to his brow. "I'm here," she whispered. "I'm not leaving." 2 days passed in that hollow. Slowly the fever broke. By the third morning, he sat up weak but alert. "They won't stop hunting us," he warned as she helped him mount. "We have to reach the winter grounds before the first snow." They moved slow, threading through mountain paths only the Apache knew. The air thinned, biting cold. Forests grew thicker, more silent. On the 5th day, Onas suddenly pulled his horse short. "Look!" Far ahead, a valley lay nestled between protective peaks. Thin smoke curled skyward, cooking fires barely visible against the forested hills. "The winter grounds." June breathed, heart-swelling. "We made it," Onas said softly, taking her hand. As they rode down, shadows moved on the trail, Apache, scouts armed and ready. When they saw Onas, they burst into cries of joy. Word traveled fast. By the time the pair reached camp, the entire tribe had gathered. Halai pushed forward, her stern expression crumbling as she saw her son's wounds. "Foolish boy," she muttered, steadying him off his horse. "Always fighting." But her hands were gentle. When her eyes met June's, something unspoken, past approval, respect. "You kept him breathing," Halai said. "Good medicine." It was the kindest thing the woman had ever said. As Halai led Onas away to rest, the tribal elders surrounded June, anxious for word of the others. She told them all of the ambush, the canyon, the gunfire, how Onas shielded her. "And the rest?" one elder asked, voice low and heavy. June's face dropped. I don't know, she whispered. We got separated in the chaos. A heavy stillness hung over the camp. Prayers rose into the cold night for the missing Apache warriors, and guards kept watch on every trail leading into the valley. That evening, June Wycliffe sat beside Onas, who lay resting in Halai's wickiup. The older woman quietly joined her. "You love my son," Halai said, not as a question, but as a truth. "Yes," June replied without hesitation. Despite the risks, despite everything it meant to love an Apache man, she met Halai's gaze with quiet resolve. "I know what it means to feel alone," she said. "To have no one nowhere to belong. But with Onas, with all of you, I have that now." She motioned toward the camp just beyond the hide walls. "This is the life I choose, and I'd choose it again tomorrow." Halai studied her face for a long time, then slowly nodded. "Then you are one of us now, my daughter." Those simple words, spoken with heartfelt sincerity, brought tears to June's eyes. Halai reached out with her weathered hand and placed it gently over June's. For the first time, nothing stood between them, only a shared love for the warrior sleeping nearby. In the weeks that followed, as winter tightened its grip on the high country, more Apache warriors returned, survivors of the canyon ambush who had scattered to survive. Each face that came through the snowy woods was a reason to rejoice, but many would never return. Onas grew stronger with each passing day. His determination burned steady in his chest. "We'll make it through this winter," he told her one night. "And when spring comes, we'll move further far from the soldiers." "They won't stop hunting you, will they?" June whispered. "Not while they believe you're still a captive," he said, eyes locked with hers. "But they won't find us. Not where we are going." When the first snow painted the valley in white, June and Onas were wed in an Apache ceremony. It was a quiet ritual, no frills, no pomp, just sacred vows exchanged before the tribe, promises of love, loyalty, and a shared journey through all seasons of life. Halai gifted June a necklace of silver and turquoise. "It was my mother's," she said, fastening it around June's neck. "For my daughter who came from far away and found her way home." And that night in the wickiup that was now theirs, Onas pulled her close, the wind howling just outside like a distant lullaby. "Are you happy?" he asked, his fingertips brushing her cheek. June looked at the man who had rescued her not just from danger, but from emptiness, from a life of wandering without purpose. "I'm home," she whispered. "I'm finally home." Spring was slow to come in the highlands. Patches of snow still clung to shadows, even as the wildflowers began to bloom across the open meadows. The Apache prepared to journey, on searching for safer lands away from the march of settlers and the reach of the army. On their last morning in the valley, June stood on a rocky ledge, gazing across the place that had cradled them through winter. Her hand rested over her stomach, where a new life had begun, a child born of two worlds, destined to know where they belonged. Onas came up behind her, his arms wrapping around her waist. "Second thoughts?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "No, just saying goodbye. This valley kept us safe. I want to honor that." He nodded, his voice low and sure. "There'll be other safe places. We'll find them together." "Together," she repeated, turning into his embrace. "That's all that matters." As they descended toward the waiting tribe, June reflected on the lonely, frightened woman she had once been less than a year ago, the one who had sobbed into the dirt whispering, "I don't belong anywhere." How wrong she had been. Her journey had always been leading here, to this man, to this people, to a place where someone had looked into her soul and said with certainty, "You belong with me." And in that love and that belonging, June Wycliffe had finally found herself. The end, dear listener. And as this tale settles softly in your heart, remember, just like June, you too have a place in this world. Maybe you found it. Maybe not yet, but it's out there. The deserts we cross in life, those lonely roads filled with rejection or doubt, aren't the end. They're the road that leads to home. Your tribe exists even if you haven't met them yet. And when you hear that voice inside you say, "I don't belong anywhere," hold fast to this truth: you belong with me. And that promise may come from a person, a purpose, or a community, but it is real. And it is waiting. So rest easy tonight. Tomorrow the trail continues, and you carry everything you need inside you already. Wild West Lone Hearts. If this story touched your heart, support our channel by hitting like, comment your thoughts. Subscribe for more tales and share this story with someone who needs it. Your presence here means everything. You're why we keep riding on, telling stories of love, strength, and the power of finding your place beneath the endless western sky. Join us again soon. Another unforgettable tale waits just ahead. All stories are created for entertainment purposes and may include fictional elements or dramatized interpretations inspired by historical settings. We use AI tools, voiceover visuals, scripts as creative assistants. However, all content is reviewed, refined, and edited by humans to ensure emotional authenticity and storytelling quality. We fully comply with YouTube's policies regarding AI-generated content and do not use any deepfake techniques or misleading recreations of real individuals. All visuals and supporting materials are properly licensed. Sharing, re-uploading, modifying, or distributing any part of this content in any form requires written permission. We appreciate your support and respect for original creative work.